Well, at least in one state, in Massachusetts, a new bill aims to bar most employers from testing for marijuana. And we're joined now by Chanel Lindsay, founder and president of Ardent, a biotech and medical cannabis device company, to break down the implications. How's it going, Chanel?
Hello. Hey, Don. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you on. And so when we're talking about this sort of bill, how important is this for people living in Massachusetts? How significant for their future at these companies?
Well, it's like you said, it's their entire future. And now that cannabis has been legalized in Massachusetts and across the country, this issue is becoming more and more prevalent. People have the legal right to use cannabis, but the workplace environment hasn't really caught up. And a lot of people are still subject to initial drug screenings randomly at work, and it's impacting people even more than, let's say, that their ability to drink alcohol. Because cannabis does stay in your system for so long, what's happening is people who are using on their own time at home when they're off of work are getting positive drug tests, and it's impacting their entire jobs and careers.
Yeah, and that's a great example of how I know that when we talk about marijuana legalization, we compare it to alcohol and how free you are to consume as much as you want. But applying the laws directly from one to the other doesn't necessarily make sense because they are different substances. So I just want to confirm a couple of different things. So in general, is it more common in places where marijuana has been legalized? Is it more common that you are protected from these sorts of screenings, or is it still like common that companies can do that?
Can I tell you that there is only one state now that has actually protected patients, and that was Nevada just a couple of days ago. They passed the first statewide protection saying that people cannot be fired for positive drug tests for having cannabis in their system. And so that is the first. So believe it or not, there aren't a ton of protections, even here in Massachusetts. We just had our first ruling last year that medical marijuana patients are protected from discrimination. The court didn't exactly rule what that meant, but there was a woman who was hired. She was found to be a medical patient after that and was fired. And the court found that you can't discriminate based on somebody being a medical patient. But there were no protections just for regular people who were using cannabis after legalization. And you find that in most states, there still is this disconnect between what's legally allowed and what people can do in the workplace. And many people don't know that, and they end up getting really serious consequences and losing their entire ability to, earn income and support their families. And so it's a huge, huge issue, which is made even more difficult by the science of cannabis, which is different than alcohol or even any other drug that you could think of, like cocaine. People can use these, harder drugs, and it gets out of their system much, much faster than cannabis, which leads to just a really interesting and hard situation.
So as people are pushing for changes in the law in this area and probably in related issues as well, I wonder how much of the issue is that when I hear people talk about marijuana legalization, especially on like Fox News, it sounds like their talking points are coming from the 1950s. Like these sound like people who have no idea what marijuana actually is, what it does and what it doesn't do. Do you have to combat a lot of misinformation about how debilitating smoking weed actually is?
Absolutely. And it's funny because you would think here in Massachusetts, because we legalized somehow that we are over that, but it's not the case at all. In fact, just a month ago, a whole group of doctors and purported experts came forward against our legalization program. And so even now, what we're trying to do is roll out delivery licenses and social consumption licenses. So that's like cannabis cafes and safe places that people can go to consume cannabis, because it's still illegal to smoke in the street and in public. And so there's a huge backlash, even in legal states like Massachusetts, when it comes to having safe places for people to consume, because it's the reefer madness, it's the hysteria of people are going to be driving around using cannabis. What people don't realize is when you don't have safe places to consume, people are smoking in their car and they're driving around. And so there's absolutely still a hysteria that exists around cannabis consumption generally. And I think it's going to be really hard to get over that, because it is so deep-seated here in the fabric of America, right? In our criminal justice system, it's been tied into race, which we know is, always a huge thing to overcome. And so I think that we're going to continue to see this as legalization pushes forward. And I'm really hoping that the science can catch up at this time, because if we could get a test that could actually show impairment that doesn't exist now, I think that would go a long way to resolving this issue.
And hopefully while we're waiting for that test to develop, people will start to get a little bit more accurate information about what consumption of marijuana actually does to the body and what it doesn't do. One last question for you. So when I think about areas, states, for instance, that have legalized marijuana on the individual level, and in terms of like ability to get dispensary licenses, have we found evidence that, as in many other areas of changes in laws, that marginalized communities are being left behind, or that the law is being adjudicated in a way that is not necessarily equitable?
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head, and that's something that we, and me personally, are very, very dedicated to, this concept of equity in cannabis. And there was a thought back when legalization first went through Colorado that just legalizing on its own was going to be enough to lead to equity, and that was a very naive thought. Because in addition to cannabis being something that people enjoy, it's also, there's a huge industry behind it, right? And anytime you get money involved, you're gonna, corruption's gonna follow. And so very, very quickly, big money interests came in, these huge multi-state operators that do not care about the community or equity. And so in Massachusetts, we actually have the first comprehensive statewide equity program when it comes to cannabis. So specific license types that in the law have been reserved for economic empowerment applicants. And so it's great in the law, but now we're actually trying to implement it. And you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to even get a very small slice of this industry for the very populations that have been harmed by it for generations, that actually have led to it being a valuable commodity, right? I mean, other than cannabis being illegal and regulated, it would be the same as any other, agricultural product. It wouldn't be expensive. And so let's understand and know that the value of this industry was built on the backs of Black and brown people, the very same people who are being pushed out, marginalized, and still incarcerated over this. And so it's a huge issue, especially on the federal level. And I'm hoping that the people who are pushing forward things like the States Act are really taking a look and saying, where is the equity in this? Because it cannot be sliced up after. We need to get our piece of the pie now. And unfortunately, John, that is not happening.
Well, Chanel Lindsay, founder and president of Ardent, we appreciate you joining the show and breaking down these issues for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this clip from The Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.